Hey baby, did you miss me the way I missed you? Actually, don't answer that. I don't even think that's possible. I was actually feeling really ill for about a week. Don't worry, I didn't have what rhymes with bona, but I was going through some very hard times. Luckily, I'm back to normal and ready to start a brand new episode. If you're new here, congratulations, your life's about to change. I'm Cazwell, and this is Moisturizing with the Extraterrestrials. On this episode, I'm going to tell you all about the abduction that happened in Pascagoula, Mississippi in 1973. But before I do, please like this video, most definitely subscribe, and please bang that bell so you'll be the first to know when I drop a new video. I'm going to be telling you the full abduction story that happened in Pascagoula, Mississippi in 1973 while using the OLEHENRIKSEN Luminous Skin Kit. Now I just need to know, are you ready for
Moisturizing with the Extraterrestrials?
Alright, so who wants to talk about Pascagoula, Mississippi? I do. So Pascagoula, Mississippi is a small town in Mississippi. It's known for its military shipbuilding companies, its Gulf Coast, and seafood. The people that live in Pascagoula live by the law of God, family, and fishing. This abduction incident happened to Charlie Hickson, who was 42 at the time, and Calvin Parker, who was only 19. So it was October 11th, 1973. It's about 10 o'clock at night. Charlie Hickson and Calvin Parker drive up to a store. Charlie goes and uses the payphone, and he calls up the Cazwell Air Force Base, and he says, hey, me and my friend were just out fishing. We were abducted by aliens. We were brought on a UFO. We were just dropped off the UFO. Who do I talk to? And the guy at the Cazwell Air Force Base was like, all right, well, we don't really handle that stuff. Why don't you just call your local authority? So Charlie called up the Jackson County Sheriff Department, and he talked to Sheriff Fred Diamond. And everyone in town kind of knows who Charlie is. He's lived there like his whole life. So the Sheriff Fred Diamond knew who Charlie was, and he's like, Fred, I gotta tell you something. What is it, Charlie? Well, something just happened to me and my boy, and I gotta tell you, you gotta promise not to laugh, okay? I promise. Me and my boy Calvin were fishing. We got abducted by these aliens. We got brought on a spacecraft. They just dropped us off, and we don't know what to do about it, but I guess I figured I would call you. So Fred Diamond, the sheriff, figured that these guys were drunk, so he went right down there. He said, don't move, though. I don't want you driving. You sound like you might be tipsy. You sound like something's going on, so just stay right there. So Fred Diamond and Glenn Ryder, who's the captain, went down there to give them a sobriety test. So they had them give them a really extensive sobriety test. Calvin said that they had them jump on one leg with their head back, counting back from 100. He's like, look, I can barely even do that sober. We promise we're not lying to you. So he's like, okay, well, we'll bring you in. So Sheriff Fred Diamond and the captain Glenn Ryder brought them in for questioning, and first they separated them, and they both questioned them in two separate rooms. They were telling their story, and they both said the same thing, and so they were both interviewing them at the same time in different rooms. And then the sheriff and the captain talked to each other in the hallway. We're like, well, yeah, they're telling that same story, and they seem really scared. Like Calvin was like climbing up the walls. He was like petrified. You could see the fear in his eyes. He was like going crazy. And Charlie had a little bit more under control. So they're like, well, we think that these guys are lying. So the captain, Glenn Ryder, he's like, I got an idea. I know how we can prove that these guys are lying. So what he did was he took Charlie and Calvin, put them in the same room and closed the door and didn't tell them that they were secretly recording their conversation. Now what's interesting about this is these secret tapes just got released 2 years ago in 2018, and here's a clip of what they said. So after the captain and the sheriff left Calvin and Charlie in the room for a while, they figured, okay, well, let's get rid of these guys. We'll listen to the tapes. So they sent them home. They listened to the tapes like, wow, maybe they did see something. So when Calvin and Charlie got home that night, they both doused themselves from the head down with bleach because they felt completely contaminated after getting off this spaceship. And they were like, okay, let's just not talk about it to anybody. Calvin was really adamant about not telling anybody that didn't have to know. He's like, no one else has to know. We called the Air Force Base like we said we would. We talked to the sheriff. Let's just not talk to anyone. Everyone's going to think we're crazy. Let's just keep our mouths shut. They're like, okay, true. won't tell anybody. So the next day, they go to work, and they're not even working for 5 minutes, and the manager pulls them both aside and says, look, you guys have to make a statement to the press because the phone won't stop ringing. So I need you guys to say something to like, wait, how does everybody know? I guess back in the day, when people wanted to be nosy, they would listen into what was going on the CB radio, especially between cops. And when people were listening in and they heard everything that was going on with the cops and talking to Calvin and Charlie and picking them up and all the back and forth, everybody started talking about it. So that's how it got leaked to the press. Also, we found out the next day that the sheriff's office ended up receiving about 50 phone calls from people complaining about bright lights in the sky and people seeing a blue light zipping from side to side in the sky above the Gulf. So the press at this point not only questioned Calvin and Charlie, they were also talking to other individuals that saw stuff in the sky like this guy.
Mr. Booth, tell me what happened that night in October.
Well, I got up, I turned off the TV and come to the front door, which you can see right behind me. Just as usual, checking to see if it was locked. So I looked out the window at the top, and naturally I saw this object above the streetlight out there. So, as it caught my eye where the lights was on, couldn't hear any racket or anything. So I opened the door after a few seconds to step out to see if I could really tell what it was. It just took off.
Can you describe it?
Well, it was round, had lights all the way around it, turning in a counter-clockwise motion. Had a dome on top with a bright light shining out through the top of it. To tell the actual figure of it or anything, you couldn't tell. You could just see the lights and the one on top.
So like I said, their boss was like, you gotta make a statement to the press because I can't have people calling here all day long. And Calvin's like, oh man, this is the last thing I want to deal with. So the police escorted Calvin and Charlie to the Keesler Air Force Base, where they were first greeted by guys in hazmat suits and sprayed down because of fear that they were actually contaminated. And then they were questioned by everybody. They were questioned by military officials, the police officials, and then NASA got involved and everyone was asking questions about their experience. They even brought them to the area on the dock where they said that they were abducted to show them where they were, what happened. They were testing it for radioactivity. This is where they were interviewed by the king of UFO research, Dr. J. Allen Hynek. Dr. Hynek, who is famous for his work with Project Blue Book, flew to Mississippi 24 hours after he found out about this abduction case. And after he interviewed them, he said that this was definitely one of the most thrilling and captivating UFO abduction cases of all time. Not only because it was 2 people that were abducted, but also because there were so many people that saw something in the sky that night, and he really believed their story. So Charlie Hickson's 42 years old, he's been around the block, and he's used to talking to people, and he's not shy at all. He will tell anybody that will listen about this story. He was all about talking to the press and sharing his story, but Calvin was not about it at all. He was really shook by his experience of what happened to him on that ship, but so whenever he was questioned by the press, he would tell them that he didn't remember anything and he was unconscious because he just didn't want to deal with it. Now, the sheriff and the captain who didn't want to go public and say that they believed their stories, because this is 1973, and you're considered a whack job if you say that you believe that this stuff is real. So Charlie definitely liked talking about it more than Calvin, but they both went under hypnosis with Bud Hopkins, who specializes in hypnotizing people that have had missing time situations. They were both put under multiple lie detector tests and passed every time, and they both went under a voice stress test, which is supposedly the most accurate way to find out if someone is telling the truth. And speaking of truth, since my skin is now damp, I'm going to try on the OLEHENRIKSEN Truth Serum, Collagen Booster, and Vitamin C Complex. This smells super orangey. So Calvin Parker did not want to talk to anybody about this. He was planning on getting married, and he knew if his fiance's family heard his story about being abducted by aliens, they would think he was crazy. It would mess everything up for his wife-to-be. So he wanted nothing to do with it. I mean, he's only 19 years old. He's young, dumb, and full of conflicting emotion. This is the last thing he wants to deal with. Like, he's just a small-town boy. He likes to go fishing, make his money, go to church on Sundays. He wants to start a family. Like, he's not about the press or anything like that. So he leaves it up to Charlie. He's like, look, if you want to talk to him, you talk to him. Like, I don't want to talk to anybody. This is when Calvin Parker completely gets the hook and goes into hiding. He decided to leave Pascagoula and go back to the small town where his fiance lived and go back to working on the oil fields. He didn't want to have anything to do with this anymore. So in the meantime, Charlie is talking to everybody. You know, there's always someone in your circle of friends that will do anything for a little bit of fame. And I guess Charlie thought that this was his time to shine. So Charlie talked to everybody. He went on the Late Show. He went on the Dick Cavett show. He did all the conferences, and he dropped a book called UFO Contact in Pascagoula that I think came out in 1975, but you can get it on Amazon. I know you're all thinking, well, what happened on the spaceship? What did the aliens look like? Did they get probed? What happened, Cazwell? Tell us. And I'm here to tell you that right after this free psychic reading from Amanda Lepore.
The spirits are talking to me. I'm getting a message for Louise. Louise, your dead husband Frank wants you to know that you're still a cunt.
Alright, I am back and I am about to apply the OLEHENRIKSEN Truth Sea Rush Brightening Gel Cream. Let's go. This smells like a drink I've had at Jamba Juice before. So like I said, Calvin Parker had just moved to Pascagoula, Mississippi. He was renting a room from Charlie Hickson, and Charlie Hickson got him a job. It was after their first day at work that Charlie was like, let's go fishing. He's like, let's go. So they went to go catfishing on the Shipter shipyard where Charlie had gone fishing all the time. Now, as soon as they parked the car and start walking to the dock, they noticed all these no trespassing signs. And Calvin's like, are you sure it's safe to fish here? Are you sure that this is okay? He's like, yeah, son, like I go fishing here all the time. Don't you worry about a thing. We're going to get some catfish. It's going to be a great night fishing. So they're catfishing for about an hour and they're getting some good catches. And then they're sitting on the dock and they notice these blue lights reflecting on the water from something that's coming behind them. So if you see blue lights, you automatically think it's the cops. So they both stand up thinking they might get arrested for trespassing, and they turn around. And when they do, they see the blue light still, but it's joined by these bright white lights that are almost blinding. And the white lights are coming from inside of what they say is a spacecraft. It's hovering about 2 feet above the ground, and it's about 20 feet in diameter. And based on their drawings and how they were describing it, they were saying it was like the shape of a cigar, but a little bit thicker in the middle and a little bit of a dome on top. And the bright white light was coming from inside the craft. And they were just like frozen, like in fear. And they had nowhere to go because they're at the edge of the dock and the spacecraft is parked in between where they parked their car and the dock. So they have nowhere to go unless they want to jump in the water, and they don't. So all of a sudden, out of the spacecraft come these 3 beings. Now they describe these beings as being about 5 foot tall, maybe 5'2", and built like football players. And they had these gray, leathery, elephant-looking skin, these long arms with these hands that look like oven mitts or like lobster claws, and these legs that went straight down with no feet. And they're floating towards them, and they are freaking the out. And then 2 of them grab Charlie and 1 of them grabs Calvin, and almost immediately after this one grabs Calvin, he feels something get injected into his arm like a puncture, in which later he even had puncture wounds on his arm that he showed the police later, and so did Charlie. He said as soon as he felt this get injected into his arm, he was calm, relaxed, but he could not move. The only thing on their bodies that they could move are their eyes, said both of them. So now these creatures, who they say are moving really mechanically, and they said that they don't think that they're true like beings, like they think they're mechanical, like they move like robots. However, who knows? Other people that have been abducted by, let's say, Greys have said that the Greys have moved very mechanically too, but then they've said that that's because the Greys are actually moving on a different frequency because they come from a different dimension. So who really knows if they're like monsters or they're beings or aliens or robots or whatever. But the point is, 2 of them grabbed Charlie and 1 of them grabbed Calvin, and they are now floating above the water and the ground into the spaceship about 3 feet above the ground. They get into the spaceship and it's bigger than what they thought. They both get brought into different rooms. So according to Calvin, he said his feet never touched the ground once. And he's placed on like this transparent bench, but he's put on like a 60-degree angle and he can't move, only his eyes, and he is scared. Let's talk a little bit more about what these aliens look like. Like I said, they're about 5'2". They're built like football players, like really bulky. They have elephant leathery skin. They don't have a normal mouth or eyes or anything like that, but he said that he could see like a slit right here where their mouths would be and 2 slits here where their eyes would be. And rather than a nose, he said there were these cone-like things like that were coming out of the nose area and out of the ear area. So like a cone here and a cone here. He described it like when you put a carrot on a snowman's nose, but it was where his nose would be and his ears would be. I've read a couple of stories of their description in which they said that these aliens had really big testicles. So a snowman with really big testicles. Sounds like a good case for blue balls. So yeah, 5'2", leathery elephant skin, no mouth really, no eyes, just slits here, these cone-like things coming out of where their ears and nose would be, and big testicles. So Calvin is laying on a 60-degree angle on this transparent bench. He said it might have been like glass, but he couldn't really tell. So they're doing some tests on him and moving his body around, and he's completely at their mercy. And then he says that from up above him comes what looks like a big eye, like a big eyeball. Speaking of eyeballs, it's probably time for me to use my OLEHENRIKSEN Truth Banana Bright Eye Cream. Wouldn't you say? So he says this thing comes out of the ceiling that looks like a big bright eyeball. Like I'm thinking about, remember that movie with Tom Cruise? What the hell was that movie? In which those big eyeball things come out and they're looking for the humans so they can take their blood and eat it, like whatever. So that's what it kind of reminded me of when he was talking about it. But so he said the only way he could describe it was this big metallic eyeball that was the size of a deck of cards came down from the ceiling and started doing a body scan on him. It would go to his side right here, click, go to the back, click, go to here, click, and go all around his body for about 20 minutes. So they're doing these tests on him and he's laying down there and he can't do anything. He feels really helpless. And then all of a sudden, a woman appears and moves these beings out of the way and comes right up to him. And he knows that as soon as he sees this woman that looked like a woman, that she was the boss and that these being football player snowman looking things were working for her. And she was the boss bitch in charge, okay? So she walks right up to Calvin, looks him right in the eye, looks him up and down, and then grabs his cheek. Now this is another reason you know this lady is a boss bitch, because unless you're 5 years old and it's your auntie grabbing your cheek, it's probably pretty condescending. And I think that this was her way of letting him know that she was in charge. But of course I wasn't there. So she goes up to him and she grabs his cheek and then she starts talking to him through telepathy. She's telling him, don't worry, we don't mean any harm, we're not here to hurt you, we're just running some tests on you and your friend. But here's the interesting part. Calvin said that when she was talking to him through telepathy, she made herself sound like a southern hick girl. Those are his words. So she was using southern slang and vernacular through telepathy to make him feel more comfortable while she's grabbing his cheek and looking in his eyes.
Now don't pitch a hissy fit. We just fixing to do a couple little tests on you. Calm down and have you and your boy out of here lickety split.
But back to this lady. He says that she looked just like a lady. So he says that this lady was like a normal looking pretty lady, like 5'5", long hair. He said the only thing that was distinctly different from her in a human being was that her two middle fingers were extremely long. So I'm sure she was very popular in certain circles. So he said that after she used telepathy on him, she opened up his mouth and stuck her long-ass middle finger all the way down his throat and pressed on his navel cavity, he said, and all of a sudden his nose started bleeding. She pulls it out, she wipes off the blood. Next thing that he knows, he is being taken back off the ship by two of those big football player elephant skin guys off the ship, and he's put back on the dock. When he lands on the dock, Charlie is on his knees praying and crying and screaming. He goes, what has happened to us? What has happened to us? What just happened to us? And Calvin is frozen in fear. Like he is literally facing the water with his arms up in the air like this and he can't move. And then he's finally coming back to his senses and he's finally slowly putting his arms down. And Charlie walks up to Calvin. He's like, son, are you okay? Are you okay, son? And Calvin's like, no, bro, I'm pretty far from okay. They're both screaming and crying. They can't believe what just happened to them. They turn around. They see the door on the spaceship closed. Now the light's gone. It's just a blue light. And they see it zip up to the sky. They get it together. They walk to their car. And Calvin said that his passenger window, which was closest to where the spaceship landed, was completely shattered, but still in place. So he had to break out the window, clean out the glass. They're driving. And Calvin's like, I don't want to talk to anybody about this. And Charlie's like, let's just call the Air Force Base. And then, of course, they called the Air Force Base. And then they called the Sheriff Department. So Calvin has had his mouth shut for almost 50 years. He never went to the press. He never called up Steven Spielberg. He never went on The Late Show. He just wanted a normal life. But in 2018, he's like, you know what? I'm in my late 60s. I've had 2 strokes and a couple heart surgeries. I'm at the end of my days. I should probably just tell people, because it's not the way it was in 1973 that everyone's going to ridicule him. And people are more open-minded now. He actually thought that this would help people that have had similar experiences. So even though Charlie Hickson went out of his way to get press and, go on the Tonight Show and write a book. He died a poor man. Anyone that's been abducted by a UFO will tell you no one ever really gets super rich off this. Calvin ended up marrying the fiance he had in 1973. He said they're still married today, and he never once spoke to her about what happened when he was abducted. But in 2018, when he decided to go public, it actually helped their marriage because there was always this secret between them, and it was the cause of a lot of PTSD that he was having. He just wanted to keep it a secret all these years because he was afraid of the ridicule that he was getting from people's reactions, and he didn't want to deal with it. So Calvin Parker dropped a book in 2018 called Pascagoula, The Closest Encounter, and he said that, look, well, I'm going to drop this, I'm going to let everyone know the story, but I'm only going to do press for 1 year. I'm only going to do interviews for 1 year. So he's pretty much stuck to that because he just wants to have a normal life. So I gotta say, I tend to believe him. I tend to believe people that want to stay quiet about things. It seemed like it really had an effect on him, and he still remembers it to this day. He says that he still thinks about it every single day. He wants to know why he was abducted and why he had the experience. He thinks there must have been something about either him or Charlie or both that these aliens wanted to examine. Something that's a little interesting about this case is I haven't heard anything else about aliens that look like these elephant men. Also, like typically when men are getting abducted, they tell stories about they've been probed, if they've taken semen samples from them, but that didn't happen in this case. I personally believe that something happened to them that night, and I'm leaning towards their story. I don't think that they're liars, but let me know what you think. Do you think they're telling the truth? Do you think they just wanted to get famous? They don't seem like clout chasers to me, but I really do want to know what you think. So if you liked this story, like me down below. If you didn't like this story, like me down below. Subscribe and bang that bell because I'm going to continue releasing a story about every week. Also, I found out about this story because someone left a suggestion down below, and I love that. So leave a suggestion down below if there's another UFO abduction case you want me to cover. But I love finding out about new abduction stories I haven't heard about before, so leave it down below. Also, in about 5 seconds, I'm going to do a cute little review on the products I just used, so definitely check that out if you want to know how this worked on my skin. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Moisturizing with the Extraterrestrials, baby. I couldn't do it without you, and don't forget, it's your duty to be beautiful. Hey beautiful, it's Cazwell, and on this week's episode of Moisturizing with the Extraterrestrials, you saw me use the OLEHENRIKSEN Let's Get Luminous Brightening Essentials Kit. I am giving this a thumbs down. That's not clickbait. I was very hopeful about this product. I did not enjoy it. I will not be using it again, but let me tell you why. So the OLEHENRIKSEN Brightening Essentials Kit costs about $42, maybe $43. I got it at Sephora. I wanted to try it out. A lot of people were talking about it, and I unfortunately was disappointed by these products that came in the kit. So where to start? How about the truth serum? Can you handle the truth? My skin couldn't. The product does contain sodium ascorbyl phosphate, which is a stable, water-soluble form of vitamin C. It functions as an antioxidant and has potential for brightening uneven skin tone. It also has citric acid, which is pretty high in the ingredient list. However, citric acid is not a very stable form of vitamin C, but it is one of the ingredients that will give you that brightness. It also has phoenixdiethanol, and I think that's what gave me light irritation, to tell you the truth. Phoenixdiethanol is an antibacterial, which is often in perfumes. I did find it a little irritating to my skin, but things that are rich in perfumes and scents are generally irritating to my skin. Now I'm telling you, this right here smells like orange Fanta, which is great if you're chewing bubblegum or drinking soda, but I don't really want that on my face. In my opinion, a lot of skincare companies that have a product that promotes vitamin C will use a citrus fragrance to try to convince the customer that they might be getting more vitamin C than they think they are. But in reality, it's just a fragrance that can actually be more harmful for your skin than helpful. It's definitely more harmful for my skin. There are definitely better vitamin C serums that will help you get a bigger bang for your buck. I can talk for hours about the benefits of vitamin C, and if you're interested in that, let me know down below and I'll do a segment about it. Up next, the C Rush Vitamin Gel Cream. Now, Jamba Juice has this drink called Orange Dream Machine, and this smells like I ordered an extra large cup of it and then doused my face with it, and then it spills all over my clothes and I smell like it all day. I don't enjoy that smell on my face, which is one of the reasons that this product definitely wasn't for me. This left my skin feeling really greasy and looking really greasy. Now, I'm all about a dewy look, and I actually do use a coconut oil on my skin head to toe when I get out of the shower that I wipe off after with a towel, but this was like greasier than that. And I'm not the only person that I heard about having this problem with this product. Like I said, there's dewy, there's greasy. This was greasy. It also claims to have 24-hour moisture. I would say that really depends on the time of the year and where you live. If it's summertime and you're in and out of the air conditioning, then I think that this might be able to give you 24-hour moisture. If let's say you live in Phoenix, Arizona, or the desert and there's very dry heat, then I don't really think this is going to give you 24-hour moisture. And I did see a couple reviews from people that lived in a very dry climate and this did not last 24 hours from them. Also, if it's wintertime and the heat is blasting in your house, you might have to reapply this more than once. So to say it guarantees 24-hour moisture, nah, not really. It also said it diminishes fine lines and wrinkles. I mean, I guess in the way that just about every moisturizer does. When you plump up your skin with the moisturizer, it will plump up the wrinkles for a little bit, but it's not really a selling point. I can't knock it completely because it does have some ingredients that are very good for hydrating your skin, like propranediol, which actually pulls moisture into your skin and promotes water retention, which will keep your skin pretty hydrated. It also has panthenol, which is also very good for hydration, but the very strong orangey fragrance in this can be very irritating to some skin types, and it definitely was to mine. Now, last but not least is the Banana Bright Eye Cream. First, I'll admit I don't typically use an eye cream. I think it's kind of a waste of money. Once in a while, I'll bounce back and forth between maybe the Shiseido eye cream, which I enjoy, but I just use the moisturizer that I have. I feel like it does the trick. I think in general, an eye cream can be a waste of money. One of the selling points to this is the brightness factor, which will supposedly get rid of dark circles under your eyes. I have seen reviews of this eye cream online in which people claim that it did that for them. It didn't do that for me. And also, like, when I look for an eye cream or whatever I'm going to put under my eyes, I just look for something that's going to moisturize under my eyes and keep me hydrated. And this product did not do that for me, and that definitely revolves around the fact that there is too much fragrance. Now, to a certain extent, I can understand why some moisturizers, especially body moisturizers, will have a fragrance to it or a light fragrance to it, but I don't see any reason to have a fragrance in an eye cream. Anything with a fragrance that close to your eyes just sounds like a pretty bad idea to me. I used this eye cream and then I worked out and then the sweat went down from my head into my eyes. It immediately stung. I immediately had to wash off my face with cold water. I don't think my eyes are any more sensitive than anybody else's eyes. So that's why I wouldn't recommend this eye cream or any eye cream with a strong fragrance to anybody. There is also lemon extract in this, which I assume is used as part of the fragrance. And it's just a really bad idea to put that under your eyes. Now, if it works for you, great. It definitely didn't work for me. And one of the reasons I did want to give this a chance is it does have some great ingredients in it, like jojoba oil, which is a great moisturizer. It also contains shea butter, and with shea butter, you really can't go wrong. So look, as a whole, I was disappointed in this product, but a lot of that has to do with it's just not compatible with my skin and my skin type. I'm not knocking OLEHENRIKSEN. I still don't even know if I'm saying the name right because I've heard 7 different ways to say it. And I would try their products again because based on their ingredients, I can tell they are trying to go in the right direction and doing good things for your skin. But if I have to go through intense fragrance in order to get those ingredients, I'm not going to get the product. I am going to look into more products from this company to see if they have great products with less or no fragrance. And if you can recommend one to me, please do down below. All right, baby. Unfortunately, the Brightening Essentials Kit gets a thumbs down from me because it didn't work with my skin personally. It might work for you. However, if your skin is sensitive to a lot of fragrance, I wouldn't recommend either of these products. That's it for today. Please subscribe, bang that bell, and leave a comment. Remember, baby, it's your duty to be beautiful.